Welcome, everybody, to the Huddle, KGUN9's weekly streaming sports talk show. I'm Jason Barr, joined as always by Pat Paris. Pat, good afternoon. How are you today?
Good. Ready to huddle up, Jason.
Huddle up and talk about the NCAA softball tournament,
Yep.
Arizona in the Stillwater Super Regional. And our guest today is Raine Wilson, ESPN college softball analyst. Raine, it's Jason and Pat in Tucson. Thanks for a few minutes.
Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
All right, terrific. Well, you did play color commentating of Arizona sweeping through its regional, the Fayetteville Regional, winning all of its games, all three of its games. What impressed you most about the Wildcat softball team this past weekend?
Well, I mean, we knew the offense was good. We knew they had one of the best offenses in the country, but what impressed me most was the pitching staff. I mean, that was the kind of question mark for them going throughout the season with all the injuries that they've had to deal with, the young pitchers that they have had sort of to throw to the fire. I mean, for a lot of these pitchers coming into the year, 54 was the max amount that they had gone. For Aisa Silva, for example, now she's up around 120, 130 innings on the year. They pitched incredibly well. I mean, we knew the offense was good. They were fun to watch in person finally, especially Dakota Kennedy, Reagan Shockey, Carly Scoopin at the top of that lineup. But for me, the biggest surprise and the biggest X factor for them was the pitching staff.
You always want to play your best ball at this time of the year, right? And it really does seem like Arizona has got it all kind of clicking now. What do you mentioned some of the things with injuries and just getting that pitching staff going, but how much of it just is the University of Arizona is generally here at this time of the year and they're just finally figuring it out and getting on the right track?
Well, I think the roots of the culture, absolutely. You're speaking to a really solid point there, in that they're used to being there. There's an expectation of being there, but there's some grit on that team. They're not taking anything for granted because the game doesn't know. But to your point about them playing their best softball at this time, I think you're spot on. But I think you have to credit the coaching staff for how they've handled that pitching staff. They haven't relied on one arm all year long. And thus now, because they worked like a staff all year, even through the ups and the downs, that's what they're used to in postseason play. Whereas you see a lot of teams across the country who've rode an ace, if you will, kind of falling off because it's tiring. I mean, we're at the end of the year, 50 games in for a lot of these ball clubs. So for Arizona, the fact that the offense is firing, the defense has always been solid. They're going to be firing. And now the pitching staff, they're committed to pitching as a staff. Aisa Silva stepped up. Brooke Mannon, the freshman, was incredible. And then, of course, Miranda Stoddard, one of the veterans on that team, was also very, very good in Fayetteville. They are definitely playing their best softball at the right time.
Okay, let's talk about one of those pitchers, Brooke Mannon. She was a highly touted freshman. She goes into the first game against Villanova, and I think she walked 3 batters, comes back the next day and was pretty much lights out against Arkansas. What do you attribute that to, and what do you think of her performance in the regional?
That was probably the most impressive thing I've seen from a freshman pitcher in a long time in college softball. I mean, any pitcher in a long time in college softball, to come back from not giving up and getting an out in that game. I mean, she came in with a lead, a cushion, and I love the move by the coaching staff to put her in that position, get her feet wet in the postseason, but she didn't get an out. And so for a lot of freshman pitchers, that can get in your head. She comes back the next day. They put her in again, but this time against the host Arkansas, number 12th ranked team in the country, and she was lights out, gave up a solo shot late. They ended up putting Silva back into the game. But I think you attribute that to the coaching staff for putting her back in the game, instilling confidence in her, because that's a tough move, right? She doesn't give up an out the day before against Villanova. Then you're going to put her against a formidable offense in Arkansas. So credit the coaching staff, but also credit Brooke Mannon. I mean, the adversity she's faced, the freshman jitters, she didn't have any room for that. She didn't have any time to have freshman jitters because of the injuries to Devin Netz and Summer Dyke and Maddox, among others. So, I mean, so impressive to come back after that tough game 1 for her and pitch her tail off in game 2.
Raine, I know that you were a standout at Duke, but you certainly know a lot about this Arizona program. Probably were watching them as you were playing as well. And with Mike Candrea being the legendary coach, and then Caitlin Lowe comes in and takes over, and we all know how difficult that must be. But this is all part of that kind of progression. And you said thank the coaching staff for a lot of what's going on right now. But you see that in about the third year here with Caitlin Lowe, and maybe that should be expected, right? This is when maybe it's her program now, and she's kind of found her footing too as a coach. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, in a way it's expected, but it still should be celebrated because I mean, so hard to come in after Mike Candrea, fill his shoes, but I can't think of a better person. I mean, one of the all-time greats of Arizona to come in, pass the torch. She understands the Wildcat way. And so in a lot of ways, her success as a player, her success in that program, and being behind Coach Candrea for so long as an assistant, as an associate head coach, it's not surprising, but it absolutely should be celebrated because it is such a difficult thing to do. I mean, but Caitlin Lowe has also built an incredible staff. I mean, Coach Lappin, Coach Joshua Bloomer, Christian Conrad in the pitching staff as well. I mean, she has put together one of the most formidable coaching staffs in the country, in my opinion, and you have to credit the leader. I mean, every team is a reflection of its leader. This Arizona team is tenacious, hardworking, professional, all the things that Caitlin Lowe is.
Well, let's stay with Caitlin Lowe here for a second. I think, Raine, she's tired of me saying that she's spent 4 years in the Arizona outfield and never committed one error. I think that's pretty amazing. But here you have a situation now where this team is the second best team in the nation in fielding percentage, the second best in Arizona program history, which is crazy. Do you think that's a coincidence? Is that something that you feel that they set out to do, or is it happened in recruiting? What do you attribute this great defense to from the Arizona Wildcats?
That's a really, really great question because watching them in person this weekend, I had similar questions. How do you create such a good defense? And I think it's all the factors, right? I think they recruit really well, but I also think it's a high priority. I mean, Coach Lappin, an Olympian, a great player in her own right, really, really takes pride in the defense. And then also you have to credit Christian Conrad as a pitching coach as well. Him and Coach Lappin do a lot of data, a lot of analytics research. So you'll see they shift and move. And with the amount of data that coaches and athletes have access to right now in softball, and it's only growing, those decisions are so critical, and it's high risk, high reward. Do you want to play the 9 set, or do you want to bring in Shockey to play the 5th person on the infield? So they press all those right buttons. And oh, by the way, they have really, really solid athletes who are bought into the idea of playing defense really, really well. I mean, Taylor Beal has been impressive, of course, Pac-12 Defensive Player of the Year. Skaggs was that last year. But I mean, Blaze Behringer is incredible at third base. Carly Skupin made some amazing plays. And then Kaya Altmaier out in right field. And then, of course, Dakota Kennedy, you cannot forget about the impact that she's had. I mean, there's no weak spots in that Arizona defense at all.
So, Raine, you've got defenses playing lights out, and they have pretty much all year. You've got the offense that we all know can get the job done. Now pitching starting to come together. So what's the limit for this team as they head into that super regional in Stillwater?
Look, guys, I'm no betting woman. I know all these mobile apps now.
Can be on this show as our sponsor.
If I were, I'm gonna bet that Arizona is going to be a very, very, very difficult team to beat. They do face a formidable opponent. Of course, Oklahoma State is very good, but you said it. They're playing all 3 phases of the game incredibly well. And interviewing Skupin, Shockey, and Coach Loeb ahead of this regional this past week, there was a sense of confidence. There was a sense of focus that I had not seen from other teams that weekend, and they showed it this past weekend at the regional. So the fact that they're playing all 3 phases well, I think they're going to be very, very dangerous in Stillwater.
Jason Barr, Pat Paris, joined on the Huddle by Raine Wilson. Raine, we're going to throw you for a little bit of a loop here. Every week we've got a Huddle poll question, and this week is not really that sports related.
We're going way off the board for this.
We're a little off topic here. Okay, but Red Lobster has filed for bankruptcy.
Okay.
And what is your take? I'll miss the endless shrimp. Haven't been there in years, or it's okay, not all locations are closing. For me, unfortunately, I would say B, haven't been there in years. Where are you on the Red Lobster talker?
Well, it's funny, as a kid growing up, I used to think that was, a nice place to go for a birthday. Maybe wouldn't ask the parents unless it was maybe my 10th or 13th. But no, I've not been there in years and years and years. Yeah. I think the last time I was there, I was poking at the tank as like a 5 or 6 year old. So I feel bad for Red Lobster, but I've not been in a while.
That's the problem. Yeah. Pat, what are you saying here?
And I said the same thing. I missed out on the endless shrimp, but clearly that's what cost this bankruptcy, right?
Part of
it.
Yeah,
And here in Tucson, we still have 3 locations left after they close one. So I'm going to go with B. Yeah, I haven't been there in years. Just didn't seem like, there's a lot of other restaurants we go to besides that one.
Here are the early results, 77% say haven't been there in years.
Yeah.
Okay, unless it's Arizona's pregame meal restaurant, we're gonna get back to softball here. Hey, Raine, does the Arizona softball name still mean something? So, for example, they weren't seeded this year. They had to go on the road. They have to play the number 5 seed in Oklahoma State, a national seed. Do you think Oklahoma State says, "Wait a second, yeah, Arizona wasn't ranked, but I mean, it's Arizona. You know, they've got some players on that team." Does the weight of the Arizona name still carry something today?
I think it still does. I do think though that with the fall, or I wouldn't maybe not the fall, but the fact that the Pac-12 will be no more does hurt that name. But Arizona is going to be a big name in the Big 12 next year, and they'll face one of their the biggest rivals. Who knows what this weekend will hold? Will it create that brand new rivalry? But I think for women my age, I'm in my mid-20s. We grew up following Arizona softball, and then right as we hit our teenage years, the SEC started growing a bit. Alabama, Florida had a lot of success. Now we see Oklahoma. What I read into that is there's parity across softball. And to your point about Arizona having that name still, I absolutely think they do in terms of what those players in Oklahoma State feel. It's not an unranked mid-major. This is a dynasty, and this is a program that has a ton of culture, a ton of roots in winning and success. And so that name still holds a ton of weight, and you can see it in how they play the game every single day. Do I think if they were an SEC team with the same record, same stats, they would have been seeded better? Potentially. But I think it worked out for them because if they had been that 15, 16 seed, they traveled to Oklahoma, they traveled to Texas. That's a much harder road. I think they were
Interesting.
seeded
Yeah.
pretty favorably considering everything that has happened. Of course, hindsight is 2020, but I think they stand a very, very, very good shot against Oklahoma State and Stillwater.
Raine, I want to ask you too about the popularity. Softball's enjoying some terrific popularity right now. We see, every game pretty much is on ESPN or at least ESPN Plus, and you can find it. We're seeing this just explosion of women's basketball, starting with Caitlin Clark and now into the WNBA. It's a great time for women's sports. Your thoughts about how this explosion has just kind of come out of I wouldn't say out of nowhere, but it now they're getting their just due, right?
Right. No, it's incredible. I mean, I can remember I was sitting in my living room with my family who aren't sports fans, and we were all crowded around the TV to watch Caitlin Clark play LSU in the semifinal. And I remember saying, hey, this is a moment in history right now. Soak this in because this has never happened before. I have never even sat down and watched an NCAA women's basketball game before this year. And so all the credit in the world to Caitlin Clark and Angel Reese and all of those women on the basketball side. But I also have to give a ton of credit to ESPN for their coverage of our sport and investing in our sport and all the sponsors to our sport. I feel very, very fortunate and lucky that I'm in my mid-20s and entering this media world at such a time that women's sports are growing. But like you said, it's due time. The product is there, especially in college softball. The product is so incredible. Once you learn these women's stories and you see the way they give everything on the field and the parity of our game is increasing. And of course, a lot of softball fans don't like Oklahoma and their dynasty and what they've created, but it has been so incredible for our sport. It's kind of like UConn women's basketball a few years ago, even Tennessee women's basketball a lot of years ago now. But man, we are in such a special time, and I feel so grateful to cover the sport at this time in the world.
Raine Wilson was a 4-time captain of Duke softball, the inaugural Duke softball team. And now here they are, I think, 3rd straight trip to the Super Regional. Did I read that correctly? My goodness, you must be proud. Did you get a chance to watch any of their games? And a combined question with that, and did they make sure that the announcers weren't announcing their home team or their own school or their alma mater? Because you weren't doing Duke and the Arizona announcers weren't doing Arizona. Did ESPN do that purposely? And did you get to watch any of Duke play?
I did watch a little bit when I could. We were lucky in that we had a lot of the afternoon, evening games, and they were mostly in the morning. So I watched a little bit of it, but I actually do a podcast with one of the girls on the team currently. So I tried not to watch too much so she could fill me in live on the show later tonight. But no, ESPN put me at the Duke Regional last year. And so
Okay.
I knew that wasn't out of the cards. In fact, I thought I would likely go back there, but I was pretty I wouldn't say adamant, but I did ask to go elsewhere because whether I act as a homer or not, whether I act biased or not, people who watch and listen might think I am. Maybe that plays into how they are subconsciously thinking and how me analyzing the game. So I really, really wanted to spread my wings and get out of the Duke bubble. And
Interesting.
and I have no problem calling Duke games. In fact, I think I'm a little harder on them than I am any other team when I do call those games because I called them digitally all year long. And so I was very, very excited to be in Fayetteville. I mean, Coach Josh Bloomer was my former hitting coach at Duke. So there was a connection there. And Christina Foreman, who was an assistant coach at Arkansas, was my former teammate. So it played in perfectly. Now, I can't speak for all of their decisions in terms of programming and why, Kenzie Fowler wasn't calling Arkansas's regional with Arizona in it. She does a wonderful job as well. But I was very
Jenny Dalton
happy to
Hill.
spread my
Yeah.
wings a little bit. Yeah, and Jenny Dalton Hill as well. Yeah, we
Yeah.
could have flip-flopped.
Yeah. I was wondering about that.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Final one for me, Raine, and that is, you alluded to it a little bit as well. This might be a preview of with Oklahoma State of a new conference rivalry. Your thoughts about these conference realignments, and now, as you mentioned, Oklahoma is going to be in the SEC, and we're going to have a big change going into the Big 12. Your thoughts?
It's a little disappointing. It's sad that we can't all get on the same page, especially for these athletes. I really feel for our athletes on the West Coast, East Coast, that will now have to travel across the country and all that while juggling schoolwork and things like that. It's unfortunate, but it is the way of the times, and I have no control, and the athletes have no control over it. So, and at the end of the day, you have to play the best to beat or you have to beat the best to win a championship. And that's what all of these teams' goals are. Do I know the future of the ACC? No. Do I know the future of the Big 12? No idea. I do know the SEC will be absolutely loaded next year as well with the additions of Oklahoma and Texas. It's going to be a lot of fun to watch. But I am deeply saddened at the end of the Pac-12 just because it was the history of our game. It was rooted in the culture of championships, and it is very saddening to see, especially with all the transfers now. And I am all for the transfer portal, but at the same time, it is sad to see these young women have to choose to leave those programs because they're not joining a formidable conference. So that's pretty disheartening, and I hope we can get things figured out for the sake of the athletes.
And final one for me here. Let's preview the Stillwater Super Regional. Arizona going up against a fifth ranked team in the country, fifth national seed, I should say. Lexi Kilfoyle had 15 straight retired batters and 19 straight retired batters in the regional, if I'm not mistaken. And Caroline Wong leads the team in home runs and RBI. What does Arizona have to do to get through the Stillwater Regional and Super Regional and go 65 miles to Oklahoma City?
Well, I think the offense is there and they can compete, right? I think the offense won't be an issue. And also just knowing Coach Bloomer, he will have a solid plan for Lexi Kilfoyle. Even with the most amazing plan, a pitcher like that is very, very hard to beat. You're not going to get a ton of opportunities to score, and you may have to cash in when you do get those opportunities. The benefit is that Arizona has a lot of pop in the bat, and so maybe they run a couple balls out of the ballpark and score early. But you said it. I mean, Wong, Godwin, amongst others, they're also a very, very formidable offense. There was a lot of questions and talks heading into the NCAA selection show about where Oklahoma State was seated. And a lot of people thought they deserved to be 9, 10, 11 based on all of the metrics, but they ended at 5. And I believe it deservedly so, just based on how they played in the regional, but also the top 10 wins they've had. They are good and they can beat really good teams, but they're also very young. And so is Arizona. So what Arizona has to do is pitch well. I mean, that is the key. If they pitch the way they did this past weekend with Silva, Mannon, and Goddard, I believe they have a chance. However, you have to give credit to the Oklahoma State offense. They are very, very good, but the offense for Arizona will get them and can keep them in any ball game, even against Lexi Kilfoyle and Ivy Rosenberry. I believe it's going to be a very, very, very fun matchup.
All right, Raine Wilson of ESPN, college softball analyst. We enjoyed your coverage of Arizona in the regional. Yeah, thank you so much for a few minutes here in the huddle with me and Pat, and really appreciate it, and look forward to hearing more of you down the road.
Thank you guys so much, and good luck, and take care.
All right,
All right.
thanks so much. That was Raine Wilson of ESPN, and boy, Arizona making its first trip ever to Stillwater. You'd think the softball team may have been there before, but not really. Keep in mind they hosted Arizona regionals and super regionals, and
Right, right.
just have never played, I guess, in a tournament or wherever in Stillwater. So
Well, they'll
making
be
their
going
first
there.
trip.
They'll be going there in the future. I
That's for
guarantee
sure.
you.
That's for sure. And the team's staying out there. We didn't ask Raine about that, but a little chance, Pat, of some camaraderie for the team to stay out and they go from Fayetteville to Stillwater and hopefully Oklahoma City. Right? They don't
Right.
come back here.
You can stay right in that whole region and never leave. And school's out, so why not? And just spend some time bonding and in resting up and preparing for your next opponent, and that's Oklahoma State.
If you get along, those road trips are fun. They really are. So, we should also mention Arizona baseball, Pac-12 regular season champions. Chip Hale today named Pac-12 Coach of the Year, first ever to be named Pac-12, back then Pac-10 Player of the Year, and now Pac-12 Coach of the Year.
I think, Jason, that's pretty phenomenal, right? In the
Don't you think?
history of this league, the Pac-12, which happens to end this year as we know it, that's never happened before. And Chip Hale, such a tremendous ball player, and then obviously moving on to the majors, and then through his coaching and managing career in the big leagues, and now here, it's great to see. And not unlike Caitlin Lowe, it takes just one or 2 years. Give them a couple of years. They're going to take some lumps, and they did. You got to build the program back up. No matter, as soon as you make a coaching change, you're going to have to build the program back up a little bit, and everything is coming together for the baseball team right now at all at once. And they're playing great baseball.
So some things to look forward to the next couple of weeks. All right, let's end it with our Huddle poll question. Try to do something fun. We could have done it with something with Arizona and Oklahoma State, but it's what do you say? Bear down. There's not something really controversial or kind of fun in there. The other thought I had, Pat, of the Huddle poll question was, could you do something with, maybe Jamel Hill's comments with Caitlin Clark? But I just don't want to get into race and politics. I just, we got to keep our jobs and stay safe and be careful here. And that was kind of controversial. So anyway, thought I'd have some fun with this Red Lobster, which is obviously a talker across America right now.
Yeah, for sure.
Red Lobster filing for bankruptcy. What's your take? I'll miss the endless shrimp. Haven't been there in years. Or, hey, it's okay. Not all locations are closing. And we've got some updated results here after we teased it lately or recently. And a little bit down, but still overwhelming. Haven't been there in years. I've read some different articles, Pat. I'm not really under the hood of their financials, but also there was something going on with a private equity company owning them and leasing the land back and that expense. It wasn't just the endless shrimp causing a loss. And, they were hoping that was going to be a loss leader. Like, okay, they might lose a little money on that.
But so many people in.
They get people in the restaurant, right?
Didn't they have, and not to get too far into the weeds here, but didn't they also have some labor? Didn't they give some ownership stake to part of their labor force or something like that?
Maybe.
And I don't know. I don't. Who knows? It's just they're not going under. They're they'll be fine. It sounds like
they're downsizing.
Yeah.
All right, everybody, enjoy the softball and the baseball this weekend and everything else. For Pat Paris, I'm Jason Barr. Oh, by the way, if you missed this or you want to tell for the beginning of this, you want to tell your friends, the way you watch it on replay is KGUN9 /the Huddle. So www.kgun9 /the Huddle. Is there any .com after that, Pat, or no? No, just there it is. Okay, we have it here.
.com.
Okay, here it is.
Go to our website and /the Huddle, and you'll be able to see the past episode.
And other episodes too.
And other
episodes.
Yes.
Right. Yeah, watch them all. All right, for Pat, I'm Jason.
Over and over on repeat.
We'll see you right back here, same time next week.